Hi, hello from California, Jeanette. Hi, Patricia, Rebecca, Kevin, Claudia. Awesome, I'm so glad that you're all here. I'm going to talk about storytelling a little bit today. I'm sharing part of my story, but also as a way to see how we can change the stories that we tell about our health and well being, or our not health and well being. So, in the last live meeting, I already talked a little bit about my story with epilepsy, and I wanted to go into this again because there's also a story connected to that. When my mother gave birth to me, she was left to wait in labor because the doctor was busy for a really long time. And so I got kind of pulled out last minute and was in between life and death for a second. I actually have some memories of that, and I had some fears related to being stuck in there that I carried around with me for quite a while. So when I started to have seizures and when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, that was always connected to this birth where I didn't have enough air, and that because of that birth, that might have affected my brain and caused the epilepsy. If I had accepted that story, I would have felt like there is nothing to be done about the epilepsy, that things had already been decided, that things happened, there was an accident, things didn't turn out the way that they were supposed to be, and now for the rest of my life I am stuck with epilepsy, having to take medication and things like that. That story never resonated with me, and I have this intuitive understanding, and it never resonated with me, and I always questioned that, and that was never true for me. But I am aware that not everybody has this kind of intuitive understanding, and that is why I think it is so important to look at the stories that we're told and that we're telling ourselves about our health. And the story that I prefer about this is that my soul had a plan and it wanted to be born at a certain time, and it needed a complicated birth like that to give me that moment between life and death and kind of a near-death experience at birth that kept me open in a way, that allowed me to come into this life with memories of other times, with seeing into different dimensions, and with the gifts that I have. And obviously, my story continued after my birth, and I did not have somebody in my life who could help me integrate the things that I saw, the things that I knew, and who could help me make sense of the different ways in which I perceived the world. Yet, and so that circumstance might have also led to me having seizures later on in life, because I didn't know how to integrate the energies that I was receiving, and that definitely broke out of me in some way, which manifested in epilepsy. But I always knew it was an integration process, and that I just had to find the calm within me to be able to learn how to integrate that. And that's what I eventually did. So if you're watching this now live or the recording, I would like to ask you to think about your health stories, especially if it's something like people in my family all have this kind of thing, because we create our realities based on the stories we tell us. And we can rewrite these stories that we tell ourselves once we are consciously aware of the fact that we're telling stories about our health into something that can be changed, because a lot of things can be changed. Not all things can be changed, because sometimes our soul made a plan for us that involves a body to be in a certain way. And when you look at healing and living and health and being in this world from a soul perspective, like, which is kind of my natural state of looking at things, then death is nothing bad, because death is just a change of form. So when people come into this life with health issues, their souls also had a certain plan to teach other people something. There were soul contracts involved. And so it helps all of us when we can use our soft hearts to not judge death as something bad, and to let go of the fear that many of us have around death. So this is my little input that I wanted to start with today. And now I'm very happy to answer your questions if you have any. Oh, that's a question. What color do you associate with turtle energy? For me, turtle energy is totally green. And I actually chose or connected with a turtle as my spirit animal as well, because what I love, I'm potentially like a very impatient person. I want all the things right now, always. But the turtle and the image of the turtle, especially like a land tortoise, I guess, is the chewing, the slowly chewing, the staying present in the moment and not rushing through life. That's my personal, and it's definitely green energy for me. Are there any other questions? So one question that was posted in the chat beforehand was, okay, I'm gonna answer one of the questions that is now coming in the comments. Chrissy, thank you for being here, and hi to your son. The question is, how did you specifically heal yourself from seizures? My beyond verbal son is with me now and has seizure disorder. Since starting our spiritual journey, his seizures have decreased, but he is still on medication and still has monthly seizures. Any advice on how he can heal through them spiritually? So I have a master's degree in anthropology and politics and linguistics, so I'm not qualified to give health advice in any way. I can share my own experience, and then you can see and use your own discernment to see if that resonates in your heart and if that's something that you want to try out at your own risk. I'm just saying this, like, I'm not going to give specific health advice to anyone because I'm not qualified for that and I'm not going to go there. But I see the structures underlying specific issues. So with the seizures, for me, I think what is very important to realize is that the world currently is full of triggers. And if you're autistic, nonverbal, and there's like a lot in the air that you feel and a lot of energies coming in from all sides. I took the medication until I was in my early 40s, right? Like I was 41 when I stopped my medication, because that's when I felt calm enough to actually manage myself, and like I knew myself enough to actually be able to manage my energy. So I want to say that, especially like if you have the environment plays such a fundamental role. Like living in the countryside, living far away from city noise, like having food, clean food, having not having computers and energy things surrounding you all the time, being very grounded, connected to nature, and really listening to your heart, feeling with your heart, feeling with your body. At the time where I stopped the medication, I was at a point where when I felt a seizure coming up, I could just say no. Like, but I have already been practicing body communication. I had already been practicing body communication for a time. So when the seizure came up, I just said no. I still had to work with myself to really balance myself. And for me, the seizures often came in a state of extreme happiness. And so I didn't want to not be happy, to not get seizures either. And so it was like a real balancing act that required a certain kind of maturity, at least for me, to be able to handle that. But I do think that, like, and I also think that for autistic and sensitive children, it is so important that the parents also do the energy work of calming and grounding themselves, bringing full consciousness to most topics, no stored up anger, no stored up fear, like really working through all the emotions as the parents can really help the children to feel better as well, because we feel all the energy that everyone has around us. And so if you're not able to protect yourself yet fully, then you pick up on everything else, and that has an effect on your system as well. Is that helpful? Interesting. Kevin says, Louise Hay said about seizures that it's running away from the family, from the self, or from life. I can relate to that, but also, yeah, I think it's like it has a lot to do with energy management in the body, and being able to process your emotions regularly so that they don't have to burst out of you in that way. I'm glad that helped. And then I have another question. My grandson entered this world that way. He suffered a stroke in vitro. His brain was damaged as a result. His epilepsy required surgery. How can I help him develop? Okay, this tunes into another question, or like some other questions that I've seen come up that are very interesting, and those are about healing other family members heal. And the best thing, like literally the best thing we can do, is to envision them as healed. One of the hardest thing for me growing up was seeing other people be afraid that because of the way I am wired, I'm not able to do certain things, because I felt that in my body, and as I did not have my shields and my protection in place yet, I accepted that and I thought I couldn't do things. So if somebody is not well, I would really recommend to listen to Neville Goddard. Like, he has a lot of examples of people imagining other people healed or in a situation economically or whatever. I actually, because this came up so much, thought about doing an experiment myself with my dog, and to just like, but the idea is to just envision them as healed. And this is something that I was also gonna talk about today, because this is what also works for us. Like, healing in itself is very simple, because we just have to imagine ourselves as the healed version of ourselves and allow ourselves to keep that image in mind and not the diseased image. But what comes in most cases between our current self and the healed self are self-doubt, are guilt, shame, fear. I've been thinking about punishment a lot lately, because I think that is a very important topic to talk about in this regard as well. Like, that we think if something bad happens to us, it's a punishment, because we're used to being punished for mistakes, which is not how the universe works at all. So that is something that we can let go of. And this is where my work with the Wheel of Colors starts, because the Wheel of Colors is a traditional Native American tool. I learned about it from an Israeli psychologist who learned about it from another teacher who learned it about. So it's a bit like, one person telling another, and I don't know what the original Wheel of Colors looked like, because the one that I'm working with is also like, it uses the basic concept of translating numbers into colors, but then the way that I'm working with it is with information that I channeled myself about the colors and the qualities. But the way that it works is it's a complete system. It has 13 fields and 13 colors. And once we have activated all the 13 colors, we have all the qualities activated within ourselves as a human being to thrive. And that means overcoming guilt, shame, finding complete clarity about ourselves, who we are, and our life path, and all of these things. And it gives us, because to say, I'm just gonna imagine myself as healed when you're at a point where you don't even know how that's supposed to work. Like I was 8 years ago, where I first heard about the idea of imagining myself as healed, and I was like, that seemed like the most impossible thing to do. But the more you understand how everything is connected and how everything works together, and the more you start to understand yourself and actually come into alignment with your soul, the easier it becomes to actually find the clarity. And the colors and the wheel of colors can help us with that. Are there any other questions? What's my take on accepting all trauma and still choosing to heal yourself and others? I think we have a choice. We like with every step we take in life, we have a choice. And the things that have happened in the past have already happened. And the more I hold on to them, the more they are gonna wear me down. And the more I can free myself from them, the freer I'll become. And that for me essentially is the healing work of, like, I see the world through a soul perspective, and I had a lot of things that I was so mad about for so long, and that I held on to for so long, because I just did not understand why I was the one who had to go through these things. And as long as I did, I could not move forward. I had, like, and the soul perspective, I think, like, when we ask, what is this moment teaching me? Like, why could my soul have chosen this for me? This is the only way that I can see us collectively moving through trauma, like to come to this point that, and the understanding that things are really happening for us and that we chose them, because as long as we think they are happening to us and we did not have a choice, we feel disempowered, and it feels like, my personal experience, that feels really shitty and bad. So the empowered choice of, like, wow, I must have had a really brave soul if she chose these challenges for me in life, and the trust in me to work through them and to overcome them, and to overcome them in a way that has an impact, a positive impact for other people as well. Because the way that I see it, many of us chose the same topics, and which are related to power, and what we can see also now in the political arena of, like, the Epstein files being released, is the imbalance of power, and how we actually need to come back, or to envision and move towards equality, like full-on equality of all people, without a leadership that has so much power and that is overwhelmed by this power and deals with this kind of overwhelm with more oppression and abuse and worse. So the current imbalance of power is what is causing the problems, and the only way to overcome it is by stepping into our full power, so that we don't need people governing us, but so that we can all come and rise to a level where we can all govern ourselves as equals in this world. And I know Sharona, who just asked the last question, also had another question in the group before about the throat chakra that I thought was very... Okay, so some of my circles think I should keep reflecting or hold a grudge, but life stops for no one. But yeah, a few of my experiences I've dreamed about as a young girl, so that response was more confirmation that yes, that's awesome. I'm getting confirmation shivers as well. And you asked another question in the chat about the throat chakra, and I thought that was very interesting because this was such a big thing for me to start talking about my story and to talk at all. Like, as a child, I stopped talking other than the most necessary things, especially to grown-ups, because I did not trust anyone. And after almost 40 years of not actually using my voice in the way that I could have, it was quite like it took some practice to get into talking more. But you were also saying that you think that there are so many other ways of communication. And I think this is so very true. And as a coach, I always ask, like, what is it that you want? Because we don't all have to want the same things. And what we want really determines everything in what we do. So the question is, what do you want? Do you need your voice? What is it what is your dream? Like, what is it? Who do you want to be? Do you need your voice for that? If you do, then it's worth working on it more in order to build it, because then you can, if you have that intention. If you think, I would actually really love to explore more telepathic communication and to focus on that and to build a community of other people who also want to focus on telepathic communication, like, that's equally awesome. We have to decide what we want, and then we can figure out the necessary steps we have to take in order to get there. And there's no right or wrong, because it's up to us what it is that we wish to experience. But with some of the questions that were asked before, I also pulled a card, and the card I pulled for you was the Mother. So you can just check in with yourself what that may mean, if there's maybe some remothering, reparenting that you can do, or if there's a connection to your mother, maybe in not being able to use your voice with her, that once you become aware of that or look more at that, can help you to use your voice in different ways now. But yeah, I just wanted to share that as well. I I don't think there's, like, the cause is always in our own personal story. And to unblock it in the Wheel of Colors, it's the color rose. So what I did for myself is like, and I've been connecting the Wheel of Colors to the chakra system of Diana Cooper, because that matches quite well. And that rose would be the higher heart chakra, which is also close to the throat chakra. And this is what it was for me. Like, I needed the sweet love, compassion in myself in order to be able to use my voice. And I started to buy myself, like, this is my rose soft sweater that I wear all the time for my voice, to help me to speak my truth. That's my way. Maybe that's something that will work for you as well. But that's what I can say to that. For me, telepathic communication is really interesting because the more I come to think of it, I have been using it all my life. Like, and I can see, for example, with my mother, it often works like this, like, so quickly. But we never, I mean, like, yeah, we never talk about it as that. And I see that with other people too. And I've always, like, I could always pick up on things over distance from people and know what was going on with them. And, like, I fortunately also feel everything that is going on in the world. And when there's conflict and things going on, I feel that very, very strongly. In my field, I do telepathic channeling with, like, animals very often. Like, I draw animals and then they tell me a story, which I write down and make into art. And I am experimenting with it. And I think, like, the more people are using it and are becoming aware of the fact that we can communicate telepathically, the more fun really that will be. And it is probably a more complete communication because it is without language. And I personally also, like, my first language is German, and but I prefer to speak in English by now because I'm less attached to it, and it's easier for me to speak my mind because I'm not overthinking so much as I would be in German. And I feel like telepathic communication is a bit similar to that because it's direct. Whereas with our first language, we have all this attachment of all the ways in which we've heard it, in which we know it is used. And so there's so much emotion connected to it that it really limits our way of seeing things. Whereas in a different language or through telepathic communication, it's more direct and more clear. Is there anything else? I think I will answer the other questions. Like, if there's nothing here, then I'm gonna say two more things. One question that I got asked a lot as well was about community and how we actually start building community. And I think we're doing that right now. And every time you reach out to a stranger or to someone you like or find interesting, and I think like we really have to make this first step of breaking out of our shell and actually taking steps towards creating the communities we wish to see. And I pulled a card about that question as well. And the answer was the dreamer, which is very sweet, I think, because it invites us to dream up the communities that we wish for ourselves and for others, and to actually make our dreams come true and take the concrete steps in creating them, not waiting for others to do it for us, but actually do it ourselves. And then I asked another question about how, especially parents or caregivers of nonverbal children, can support them. And the answer was also really sweet because it was the sunshine. And yesterday I was at a meeting at the Autism and Telepathy group, and I tuned in for a message there as well. And the message was giggledy giddly do boo, and to lighten up our hearts. And I think the sunshine like moves in the same direction. The lighter we become, the more clarity we create within ourselves, the more lightness we clearness. Yeah, I think like the clarity is really like the most, like understanding who we are, how we are connected, and grounding ourselves in warm, loving presence and shining, being the sunshine, being the loving addition in somebody's life who sees the best in them and in themselves, because we always have to start the work with ourselves, seeing the best in ourselves, radiating that outwards, seeing the best in the people around us. That's how we can lift each other up and rise together. And seeing the children as healed, and that doesn't mean healed from autism, because autism isn't anything bad, but to have a life experience that is joyful for all involved, the most joyful possible for all involved, is, I think, the goal in this. So yeah, like that's something that we can all do and focus on, is being the light, being the sunshine, and helping the people around us to feel that warmth radiating from us, so they can use that, like the flowers, as their fuel to grow. And thank you all for being here today.